Welcome to another edition of the Audio Workshop. Today we're going to talk about the X-Touch Extender by Behringer. I bought one, and I kind of thought at the time that I'd be able to hook it to my X32. And that is incorrect. I also got it so I could hook it to my DAW. I'm using Logic Pro X, and it works fine that way. But when I try to hook it to my X32, it doesn't work. And I thought of ways to get around it. I looked at some of the protocols that it transmits. It has 3 different modes that it can transmit. Well, 4 different modes, really. There's Mackie control mode, either or the network port, Ethernet. It's got Huey and network. And then it's also got a control and a control relative mode, which just sends out MIDI controllers. The sliders are mapped out to controller 70, 71, 72, I think through 78, 77. And the rotary pots, they all have controllers, and you can look those up. When it's in Mackie control mode, they're actually sending out pitch bend control, so it has more resolution than you would get from a standard MIDI controller. We can connect it to an X32 using Behringer's X32 Edit. You can set a mode in there, and I'm going to show this picture. This is in X32 Edit. Under Setup, we go to the MIDI control button at the top, and there's Mackie control Edit. You also have to control or select the port, which in this case for the X-Touch Extender, it says X-Touch Extender, X-Touch Internal. And you can see this from the slide that I'm showing right now. This is the way I have mine set up. The important thing that I like is that I use the control fader bank as user 1. If I use it as all, then I only get the first 8 channels. If I use user 1, on the other hand, I can use whatever I have selected. And what I have selected, I'll put up my next slide. I used both X32 on my Macintosh and also on Raspberry Pi. That's what I'm running right now, and they have different mappings. The order that you select your custom buttons is the order they show up in the channel strip. And you can choose pretty much anything. Any channel, any bus, any DCA. And they don't have to be in order. So I selected the first 4 microphones, then I used channel 9, 11, 13, and 15 because those last 4, I chose the left half of the stereo pair. This is a demo of X32 Edit on Raspberry Pi using an extender. This is channel 1. Notice it controlling it on the screen. Channel 2, these are just my mics. Channel 3 moves channel 3. Channel 4 moves channel 4. Then we're going to go to some stereo pairs starting on channel 9 and 10, moved by 1 fader. 11 and 12 with 1 fader. 13, 14, and then 15 and 16. Notice that the selection follows the select button. The mutes work. For stereo pairs, it does both. The solo works. For stereo pairs, it works for both. Then we're going to drop down into my single channels. Channel 4. And everything works down there too. The disadvantage of using the X-Touch Extender is that there's no banking. The only controls that work on the X-Touch Extender are the slider, the select button, which will follow the channel on X32 edit. The solo and the mute button and the pan control, the rotary pot, works as the pan control. And I've heard that this does not work for Xctl. I don't have one to check it with, but it does work on X32. Another disadvantage is there are no scribble strips. When I use my X-Touch, the normal X-Touch, and hook it to my mixer directly with a network cable or via MIDI cables, the scribble strips work. But not when I'm connecting the extender through X32 edit. And I can only run one surface on the instant. I tried to hook them both up, but it'll only let me choose one. The firmware I use to check this, the firmware in my mixer is 3.09, and the X32 edit version I used was 3.2. I didn't use those versions the first time I tried. It didn't work. The protocols that I already mentioned in the X-Touch Extender does not have Xctl. And that's why it won't work with the X32 or the Xctl. The X-Touch, on the other hand, does have Mackie control, Huey, Xctl, Xctl with Mackie control, where the faders, well, you can switch back and forth. It's really cool. There's other videos on the web. You can check it out. It's pretty impressive. All you have to do is push the SMPTE Beats button, and it'll switch back from Mackie control over to Xctl, or of the X32 and the Xctl series. The transport section always works on your DAW. Using Xctl, the transport section doesn't work at all. I'm going to talk about the way that I connected my X-Touch Extender to my Raspberry Pi and also to my Macintosh, and that was USB. That way it works. I didn't try the network version. Now the X-Touch Extender, I don't know what it does. Don't turn off your extender when it's connected to a X32 edit application. It doesn't remember when you turn it back on. The modes that the extender will connect in, Mackie control and the control relative, can either be USB or over the network. With the network, in this application, it has to be the RTP protocol, and it can be either the master or the slave. And you can use DHCP if you want. And DHCP is a server inside your router that assigns it the network number. There's a number of reasons you may not want to use it. I like to know what the number of each of my devices are. I don't want them to be assigned at random. And at a school that I help set up their wireless networking for their X32, the school district gave me an access point. And an access point doesn't have a DHCP server inside, so you have to manually assign every address connected to the X32. The X32 edit is a nice little bridge, especially when I use my Raspberry Pi. It's one little device that I can connect. Right now I've got it connected with a network cable, but it'll work wirelessly also. So I can use it as a remote controller of 8 faders. And if I switch to all, then there actually is a way to do a sort of a cheating way of doing a banking control. Using the controlled fader bank, You can use all, which will control the first 8, and then you can program the 2 users. And you can switch that while it's running. I just tested that, and it works. It's a little awkward, but you can use that. So I like it because I can control the 8 faders that I want. Now, if you want serious flexibility, use Mixing Station instead of X32 Edit. It has a wonderful number of features. You can do custom layouts. It's got, at least on the Android version, you can do MIDI in from this and have it do all sorts of wonderful mapping. You can map any control to anything. You can put up the whatever elements you want on the screen, and it will show everything that you choose. That's the important thing. With X32 Edit, you're stuck with what they gave you. Well, there is a little bit of control, but it's not nearly as flexible. And the one thing that I really like about Mixing Station compared to X32 Edit is the programmer wrote something that he calls IDCAs, which are similar to your DCA group, which are remote controls. Using Mixing Station, you have an unlimited number of remote controls. And his implementation is much different than Behringer's. In X32 Edit, the DCAs simply control the DCA that's on the console. Turning a DCA up, increase the signal to that group. Well, not really the signal, that's the trick. It's a digital control, and it doesn't increase any level that you can see on any faders. It's not using a bus, and it's not actually physically moving the faders up and down. It's invisible, and that's why I don't really like their implementation of the DCAs. I like the Yamaha's version better, where I push the DCA up, and it moves the faders in relative position to each other. Now, Mixing Station's implementation of IDCAs is the same type of thing. You push the one slider up, and it moves all of the sliders on the mixer up and down in relation to each other. So you push up the slider 3 dB, it'll add 3 dB to every channel that's in that group. It's really wonderful. And it's got some pop views, so you can, depending on how you have it set, long hold the button and it'll show you all of the elements in that group. It's pretty slick. I highly recommend Mixing Station. However, if you want to do it for free, or you don't have an Android tablet, because as of this publication date, the iOS version doesn't support MIDI input from the X-Touches or the X-Touch Extender. So the workaround, using Behringer's provided software, connect your X-Touch Extender to X32 Edit. Put it in Mackie control mode, and you have remote control. This way you can have 16 faders if you use an X-Touch and an extender at the same time. I believe you could probably use 2 extenders if you use 2 Raspberry Pis or 2 tablets. I'm sure that would work. But I do like the fact that I can have 16 sliders available. Anyway, I've never seen anything on the internet that shows anyone using the X-Touch Extender controlling an M32 or X32. If you like what you've seen, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have any questions, put it in the comments. I'll go into more depth on the X-Touch in my next episode. Where I go may depend on the comments. Thanks for watching.